Salutations, respected viewers. I am George from Ireland. This video is about the New Zealand mosque shooting. Just a couple of days ago, I suddenly saw on BBC 49 people shot dead in a mosque in New Zealand. Well, I never saw that one coming. New Zealand's known to be an extraordinarily peaceful society. It's got a tiny Muslim community, and up until now I wasn't aware of them getting any grief. But there we are. So some more people have been injured, some of them may yet succumb to their injuries, so the death toll might yet rise. Well, what can I say? I hope it doesn't come across as glib. It's a horrific atrocity. You wouldn't want 49 innocent people to be killed under any circumstances. So there they were in their place of worship, not doing anyone the least bit of harm, and somebody comes in and shoots them dead. Now, there's the man who was arrested at the scene and who filmed it and I think broadcast it live and said he was going to do it, and was arrested with the firearms used to kill the people. And okay, ballistic tests haven't been done yet, but presumably they will trace the bullets back to that firearm, and his fingerprints are all over it, and whatever, he was witnessed by dozens of people doing it. I don't think I'm jumping the gun by to say they have arrested the killer, who chose not to take his life, decided to surrender. So much for him being courageous, because I know some white supremacists will be applauding this crime and saying that the guy was gallant for killing unarmed people. Anyway, it's unsurprising to learn that the prime suspect in this case is an outspoken admirer of Donald Trump. So remember Donald Trump talking for a total and complete shutdown on Muslims entering the United States? And I know this crime took place in New Zealand, but the sentiment is the same, saying that he was against radical Islamic extremism, not drawing any distinction between the average Muslim and extremists and all the rest of it, constantly demonizing Muslims and other ethnic and religious minorities, and trying to bring in a Muslim ban to prevent Muslims entering the United States. Actually, eventually it was only on 7 countries, and blah, blah, blah. So words lead to action, and that rhetoric has consequences. Trump, in saying that that Muslims were coming via Mexico, I mean, I don't know if that's ever true. Maybe a handful of them have, but Muslims aren't bad for being Muslims, for praying towards Mecca 5 times a day, or giving to charity, or following the Quran in that wise. Obviously, there are bits of the Quran I strongly disagree with, but that would be the true of Christianity, or probably any sacred text, claiming that it was an invasion. Now, some people in Kiwi land feel the same. Obviously, this man did. So the thing about invasion is Trump wasn't using it metaphorically. He was saying people were crossing the border. That's why I'm sending the army, as though it's a literal invasion, although the US military were actually legally prohibited from doing anything. They were walking a spin. So if you are invaded, what do? Defend yourself? They're coming to kill you. You fight back, you kill them before they kill you. And that is the mindset that Trump has promulgated, and then people have acted on his words. So Trump has provided the mood music for this massacre in New Zealand, because some white supremacists in New Zealand believe the same as Trump believes. And a lot of Trump was saying this is applying to Europe as well, presumably the whole Western world. So by constantly speaking in such a vituperative fashion about our Mohammedan brethren, that makes some white supremacists detest them. It's a bit like Henry II, will no one rid me of this turbulent priest? Now, he didn't actually order the 4 or 5 knights to go and kill Thomas Becket, but they just took their initiative. They just took it one step further. They just said, we'll supply the blanks. And this is cumulative radicalization. He says this, so I do that, and someone else does that, and it gets worse and worse and worse. So obviously a real statesman would be trying to calm the situation, reintroduce tranquility, social harmony, and all the rest of it, not fomenting odium. Extremist content, terrorist handbooks are banned, and so should such oratory by the likes of Trump. So Trump has obviously set off a time bomb in someone's mind, and it finally exploded. And incendiary rhetoric leads to actual incendiaries being used in time. He's constantly speaking in an inflammatory fashion about all sorts of people. Now, white supremacists would be discombobulated to learn that there are white Muslims. If you use the word white in a literal sense, about having the very, very pale skin. Look at the complexion of Muslims in Bosnia, or Turkey, or Syria, or Albania. Most of them are what would count as white. I mean, how white is white? I don't know where the dividing line is. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I know I'm white, and some people definitely are, some people definitely not. Other people, it's questionable. But I don't care who's white or not. No one should be treated better or worse on the basis of skin tone or faith. So white supremacists care deeply about falling birth rates, but I suspect that's partly because white supremacists tend to get very little sex. So Peter King, listen to this American politician, and it goes, the extreme is mainstream, as Ben Shapiro tries to say about Muslims. So you could say about, say, the Republican Party in the United States. Peter King saying, we cannot restore our civilization with someone else's babies. Our civilization. So who's our civilization? American? White American only? Or what? Who's this someone else who doesn't count, whose children you don't want? Ethnic minorities in the United States? Probably. So who's not us? And Peter King has railed against low fertility in Europe, despite low fertility being very strongly correlated with improved standards of living, prosperity. And indeed the reverse is true. Very high fertility, very high birth rate leads to dire poverty. You could see it in the Central African Republic or Niger, some of the countries with the highest birth rate in the world and the lowest standards on the Human Development Index. So Peter King, what is he against? Black people, Arab people, Indians, Chinese and so on, who are often citizens of European countries having children? Maybe. Odd for someone who's anti-abortion to be speaking that way, someone who's such a fervent Catholic who presumably has a moral disapprobation of contraception. How many children has he had? Clearly not enough. Practice what you preach. What a hypocrite. So Peter King, he was an advocate for terrorism in Ireland. He was a vociferous supporter of the IRA when it was trying to destroy democracy, when it was killing people who didn't agree with it. The supposed defender of the Catholic community, who obviously they were very anti-Protestant, murdered hundreds of Protestants for their religious denomination, and yet they killed far more Catholics in the British Army, Catholic civilians who didn't support them or just got blown up, sometimes by accident, murdered for allegedly being a petty thief, murdered for allegedly informing the security forces to try and end the conflict. So, the United Kingdom has been a firm ally in the United States since 1941, and there Peter King was advocating for these crimes against humanity committed by the IRA. So there he was trying to express the maximalist version of Irish nationalism, ethno-nationalism, and to stoke hatred against another ethnic group, another religious denomination. Obviously, I realise there were loyalist terrorists in Northern Ireland as well who were anti-Catholic, equally detestable, but no mainstream politician in the United States or Great Britain supported that sort of behaviour. Anyway, so Peter King, despite talking about so-called liberation in Ireland, obviously was against liberty in Northern Ireland, he backed up the illegal occupation of Palestine, people who really are oppressed. So he's indulged in anti-Muslim rhetoric. He's been an advocate for torture, waterboarding and so on, which indubitably is torture according to the Convention Against Torture, Inhuman and Degrading Treatment, which the United States is a signatory, which the US Congress has ratified, and the US obviously wags its finger at other countries for doing this sort of thing, despite the US doing exactly that. King, he supports the detention of people without trial for decades in Guantanamo Bay, so he's obviously completely against civil liberty, the right to a fair trial, the right not to be tortured. And people held incommunicado in Guantanamo Bay without any legal representation, without any recourse to law, no due process there. But I suppose they're Muslim, so he thinks they're not human. It's as grossly prejudiced and unfair as can be imagined. So here is America betraying its own sacred principles. It should be held to its own avowed standards. So people in the United States, some people used to be anti-Irish, anti-Italian, and or anti-Catholic, and Peter King's of Irish and Italian extraction. So it was wrong when people like me were mistreated, and it would be also wrong when Muslims are mistreated and demonized. Now, the other thing about Peter King is that he wouldn't like to know this. Where did he get the surname King from? He's got English ancestry. Almost everybody in Ireland has got some English forebears. Just as many people in England have got some Irish antecedents. So look at his last name, or surname is what he actually say in Ireland. Now, so it's richly ironic that he obviously wants to blow up his distant cousins, people who were in England. So Mr. King is very pro-Israel, and all right, I support the existence of Israel. I also support the existence of Palestine. There's no contradiction there. And white supremacists are often anti-Semites, so he buys into their agenda a bit. They'll hate this group but not the other. Well, it's better than hating both, I suppose. So King repeats many Nazi tropes, but directs them against Muslims instead of Jewish people. I don't consider that to be an advance. So people of any faith have the right to be in the United States, not just whites, not just Christians, and so on. So remember, the United States boasts is the first country in the world to have religious liberty, which is something to be applauded, and therefore no religion ought to be demonized or forbidden or harassed or restricted in any way. Obviously, so long as you don't do anything which breaches the law, that's that. And obviously, there are many Christians who'd like to break the law, like the fundamentalist Church of Latter-day Saints who want underage marriage and things like that, and plural marriage. So there we are. Unfortunately, some of this vile rhetoric in the United States has spilled over into Kiwi land and caused this mass murder.